And welcome everyone to the Monsters, Myths, and Mayhem podcast. I'm the host Silver, and my co-host is.
Chaotic.
Today's episode is going to be about the Phoenix.
Woo!
What all do you know about the Phoenix, Chaotic?
So, statistic wise, nothing. But I've enjoyed reading about phoenixes in books. So, kind of like by association. The rebirth, the tears, the healing, the way that they can literally age to their top age, burn themselves up, and be reborn out of ashes. The general, I think, knowledge about phoenixes. But I'm interested to see what stories you found because I've only ever read the ones in like fantasy books.
The Phoenix is in many cultures, and everybody agrees in all the cultures that the Phoenix has the power of resurrection.
Mm.
So once it dies, do you know the process of its resurrection?
Other than it literally just spawning out of ashes, no.
It actually, there's a couple different ways I've seen. So at the end of the Phoenix's life cycle, it'll start gathering and making a nest out of spices and cinnamon sticks, cinnamon twigs. There's two different versions I've seen about the Phoenix and how it catches fire in order to burn itself up. It'll either, on its nest, it'll spontaneously combust, lighting this entire nest on fire, which I think would probably smell good because it'd be bird and spices and cinnamon on fire. The other way is it'll be in its nest, and as the sun is rising, it'll be singing, and the Egyptian god Ra, as it's flying across, no, not Ra, Apollo, the Greek sun god Apollo, as he's pulling the sun across, will stop his chariot and listen to the song. And since he stopped his chariot, the sun will catch the Phoenix on fire and then burn it up that way.
Either way, it's smelling pretty good.
I've never burnt cinnamon twigs, cinnamon sticks, so it might not smell like cinnamon. Maybe that's why cinnamon is spicy.
I've never actually burnt the twigs myself, but I get them in a lot of my candles and stuff, and they still smell good when burning. So I would imagine it would still smell.
But once the Phoenix is done burning and burnt down to ashes, the new Phoenix will appear as a baby, and it'll start building. It'll take all the ash. It'll start forming this egg out of the old ashes, and mix it with myrrh and other ingredients. And myrrh is I'm guessing it's pronounced myrrh. It's Myrrh. It was used in ancient Egypt in order to help preserve mummies and such. It comes from a tree.
Interesting.
Yeah, but it'll form this egg out of myrrh. Then it'll take all the old Phoenix's ashes and shove them inside the egg. And then it'll take the egg and it'll fly to Heliopolis. Heliopolis, the
Beautiful.
city of this, which means the city of the sun in Greek. I'm not sure what happens to the egg after that. If it's gonna be like just like a burial type deal, like a tomb for the old Phoenix, or if it's actually gonna hatch into a new Phoenix in case the old Phoenix is killed before it's aged up. As I've been kind of mentioning a little bit between the Greeks and Romans and the Egyptians, the Phoenix is in all those cultures, but it is also they have versions of the Phoenix in Persian and Chinese mythology, and also in Judaism and Christianity. They got versions of the Phoenix in them
Interesting.
that go by different names. The Egyptian Phoenix is named the Bennu. It is pictured as a gray, purple, blue, or white heron with a long beak and a two-feathered crest. Occasionally, it was depicted as a yellow wagtail or as an eagle with feathers of red and gold. Sometimes the Bennu was pictured as a man with the head of a heron wearing a white or blue mummy dress with a transparent long coat. So, like on the hieroglyphs and such, they say that the Bennu was formed by because it bursted out of Osiris's chest.
That's painful, but all right.
Specifically the heart. When it say, Bennu burst forth.
English is hard, so it's fine.
Burst forth from the heart of Osiris, or that it created itself from a fire that was burned on a holy tree in one of the sacred precincts of the temple of Ra. The Egyptian and Greek were the most commonly known even though there's not many stories really about them specifically. They're just used to reference them a lot. And they say that it could have actually been a real bird based off one of the extinct great herons. Used to be alive back in the day. I'm going to guess the Egyptian and Greek mythology are mixed a little bit based on the time that the Greeks actually controlled Egypt.
So like they're pretty it sounds like in most of the cultures they're held pretty high on like the sacred list.
Yes, they are held very high. Egyptians seen them in part of their religion and such as the factor of rebirth, like they did with the mummies, how the soul is always reborn.
Yep, yep.
Some people see the phoenix as the soul.
They're just like such a like a pure creature. Like
Mhm.
we've had I would put them on the same level of like I respect them and love their meaning in mythology a lot like the Thunderbird.
Yeah,
They're both very sacred and they have big meaningful purposes in most of the lores and stuff.
yeah, they're to be respected, and not really foiled with. No one ever seems to have tried to kill a phoenix or capture one, besides in literature stories. I've seen in actual mythology, because they say that there's only one phoenix alive at a time. That's pretty common with throughout all the other locations that it's mentioned in. Some of the things I found that they can't agree upon were the looks of the phoenix and the age range of the phoenix. I've seen some cultures say that it lives 50 years, others say it lives 140 years, others say 500.
But do they agree that it's immortal?
Yes, that it always resurrects is the common agreement upon them.
But they don't agree with how long it lives until burning.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 50, 140, 500, 1000, and 1400 for the ages I've seen in the texts I research. And the Persian phoenix, they called the Huma, 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 Huma.
Humana.
It was also known as the bird of paradise. It was similar to the Egyptian phoenix, which it consumed itself in fire every few hundred years to raise anew from its ashes. It was considered a compassionate bird, and its touch is said to bring great fortune. It looks different than the Egyptian and Greek phoenix and the Bennu, as this one is the Huma is two birds. It's both the male and female joined together in one body, each sharing one wing, one leg. It avoids killing for food, rather feeds on carrion. Forgot to look up what carrion is. Do you happen to know?
I guess like what I think I do, but like I'm gonna put my foot in my mouth if I say what it is because it's probably not what it is.
Google is a friend. Uh, okay. Carrion. Dead and decaying flesh of an animal. So they're scavengers. They prefer to scavenge like vultures. Persians teach that great blessings will come to that one person on whom the Huma's shadows fall. Persian is pretty much that same color, I imagine, as the Greek phoenix with the reds, the purples, the blues, the fire colors. Which is another myth in, I believe, Asian mythology. Not sure if it's Japanese or Chinese, about two birds that form together for life, and they're each half and half. Could be similar to the Huma story also. I think they're called couples birds or something like that. Then in China, their phoenix is called the Fang Wang Fang Hang Fang. I am sorry for any mispronunciations. Okay, I is laughing at me currently. Fang Huang. Feng Huang.
Yeah, Fingwing.
Okay. Symbolizes completeness, incorporates basic elements: music, color, nature, as well as the joining of yin and yang. It's a symbol of peace and represents fire, the sun, justice, obedience, and fidelity. Unlike the unlike the phoenix, though, the Huang Hang is completely immortal, and it only appears in times of peace and prosperity.
I just love that all the cultures like let it stand for like peace and stuff.
A very peaceful creature, which is probably why Dumbledore is just kind of left after when the war started. Didn't show up.
Fox was like, I'm done being here, thank you.
In Judaism and Christianity, seeing that they referred to it as the Chol or the Hole, I didn't really dig into this a lot because that's more the religion and stuff that I didn't really think there was a longer bunch of information on that side. So, but it pretty much was the exact same as the Greek and Roman, as in looks and abilities, but it just didn't. They chose to name it Chol, Chol, or Hall, Hol. Sometimes a quote I found where one of the earliest terms Phoenix was used is from a fragmented text that was attributed to Hesiod, who lived between the 8th and 7th century BCE. And inside that text was about nymphs. They were talking about how to measure their lifespan. You know what nymphs are, right?
Nymphs are like, I like to pretend they're like land sirens. They're just like cute little, I'm going to do what I want over here and like transform into this other thing because I don't want to be around people or men, and they just like do their own thing, and they're so, I'd like to talk about them sometime.
We'll add those to the list. They're very elemental nature based creatures.
Yeah, I like them. I like them a lot.
They were measuring their lifespans in phoenixes. That's what they were in this fragmented scripture text. There was nymphs talking about measuring their lifespan in phoenixes. That was a unit of measurements.
Interesting.
A chattering crow lives out 9 generations of aged men. But a stag's life is 4 times a crow's, and a raven's life makes 3 stags old, while the phoenix outlives 9 raves. But we, the rich-haired nymphs, daughters of Zeus, the Aegis holder, outlives 10 phoenixes.
Interesting.
That was based on the phoenixes living 500 years. So the nymphs could live pretty close to 5,000 years.
That's pretty cool.
So if this text was found in 8th century BCE and it's currently 2022, they're about halfway through their life right now.
Imagine.
Still all this stuff going on in 2022 could just be their midlife crisis. I thought it was fun.
No, it is. It's neat. I just find it so cool that, like, if we think about these mythological creatures sometimes and the amount of time they can exist and be around, it's cool for me to think that maybe they're just better at blending now.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe everybody's just better at pretending to be immortal. So we don't have as many like, oh, I went to the temple and saw this crazy stuff happen. And they can just blend. They just do it.
Masters of disguise. They are turtly enough for the Turtle Club.
Turtle. I literally was trying to find my fucking button to do that.
All I really have that I could find on the Phoenix, like I said, a lot of it was repeats information. They say the Phoenix comes from Arabia. That's another thing they have in common. Was a lot of the cultures said that the Phoenix is from Arabia, and it flies to Heliopolis.
Did the Greeks agree on that?
Yes. Yeah, the Greeks agreed upon that as well, from what I could find. Mentioned earlier, the Phoenix is in a lot of literature nowadays. It used to be heavily in religion, but it is not so much anymore. It has now moved over to more literature-based stories, such as Pokemon, Harry Potter. It's in D&D. They actually got a high rating for it. It's a CR16 rating, which is the same as an adult dragon. I looked up its stats. It is crazy. It also has a resurrection stat in there.
Interesting.
It's in the anime. Its name's used in anime One Piece for Marco the Phoenix, who has a devil fruit that makes him turn into a phoenix, and many books and such as well. I believe it's in the Percy Jackson series. Imagine it probably would be.
It is in the series. I don't think it ever made its appearance in the movies, but it was in the series.
That is all I have then. So I guess we can kind of move on to the mayhem. Mayhem wise, not sure. Maybe if the phoenix turned completely evil? I'm not sure what it actually does with the rest of its lifespan. Besides making good fortune and flying around doing whatever it pleases. It's got 50 to 1400 years unaccounted for. It's all stories just talk about its death and birth. And nowadays, people would probably be trying to catch it for zoos, especially if it's the only one.
For zoos,
Collections or
that's an
poaching.
atrocity. I mean, I can't say that I would want to catch one for a pet, but like in the same turn, I'm like, no, not the zoo.
I think a lot of nature preserving groups would probably want to keep a tracker on it and leave it in the wild, maybe. If it is known in all these cultures, do you think, and there's only one alive in the world, do you think it flies around the entire world constantly?
I would assume.
If it's the same phoenix, even though they got different descriptions, if it were to turn against us, I don't think we would be able to do anything really about it unless we try and figure out a way to contain or capture it. And if it's a real bird or if it's just completely fire, like some of the pictures. I'm not sure
I
mayhem part.
mean,
It's kind of too nice, really, unless something were to
right.
happen.
But in that same turn, like in the same breath, could its healing powers easily siphon from the mortals in the earth? Like, could they just decide not to benefit anything else but themselves?
I'm not sure if their powers can be reversed.
Right, but I mean, there's also never been a like a modern day, like obviously our wars are much more intense and much more hello? Thank you. Our wars are much more intense and much more bloody and weaponized. And the phoenixes aren't like super intelligent creatures, like to the point that I feel like they could like transform or like in my opinion like become more human or god capable in their minds, but naturally out of instinct would the animal stop or reverse any assistance it gives mortality slash other creatures, you know?
I mean, it's possible based on instinct. It probably, or maybe it dies out faster because of the more likely
Right.
injured.
Right. Like something to that effect, like it's siphoning out of it because of how negative things would be or something.
Maybe that's why the age range is so spotty between the ages 50 and 1400 is it's when it uses its powers to heal, it actually drains its own lifespan. So the periods of more conflict and war, it actually lives shorter and takes longer to be reborn. Times of peace, it lives longer. Since there's more people around now, it's just been just getting shorter and shorter lifespans. And that's a possibility. Do you had anything else to add?
Not really. I guess like mayhem meter wise, I feel like they rank low in the sense that they couldn't cause any like mayhem advertently, but I feel like there's a sneaky aspect to this that's a possibility if it were to come to modern day society.
Yeah, I agree. Especially if they can, if they do like dragons, maybe have the ability to shapeshift and kind of hide in with people.
For sure.
Like on the episode of Supernatural they were in, he was in with a cowboy back in the 1800s. He just killed the sheriff for killing his wife.
Yeah,
I think it'd be on a more localized scale, depending on the size of the phoenix as well.
for sure.
Dragon size, or if he's bird sized. It's a fun part. It's more open ended with what they're able to do with as little information as there are about their specific personalities, habitabilities, more open for different creators to express things with them. Yeah, I agree. A little lower on the mayhem scale.
For sure.
Anybody would like to add more mayhem details or talk to us, you can always visit the Discord.
Yeah, for sure. Tell us any of the stories you have about phoenixes. I just think they're such beautiful creatures. Just with the mayhem meter being low and they're not quote unquote negative creatures with mayhem. So it's just not a lot to talk about mayhem wise. I just think they're neat. I was just really excited to listen to the stories and the information that you had found and stuff. But I feel like phoenixes are a fairly widely known creature. So
Mhm.
there isn't a lot to say that a lot of people don't know. However, I was very interested to know how many different cultures believed in them and had them. So it's neat. But yeah, like you said, I think it's a little shorter just because it's a much more peaceful creature.
Be kind of interesting if the Thunderbird and the Phoenix would be friends, or if they would just be
Right?
territorial over each other.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like the Thunderbird would be territorial, but I feel like the Phoenix would just be like, okay, I'll just move over here, bro. Like you don't have to be mad about
Yeah.
it.
Seen a little fact about Phoenix, Arizona, which is a state in the U.S. In case, or Arizona is the state in the U.S. Phoenix is the capital of Arizona. Named Phoenix, Arizona, because it was the frontier station settled upon the ruins of a Native American site. First, European inhabitants decided to name their city in concurrence with the idea from the ruins of one city another was created. This little fact to end up on.
Very neat. Join us again next Monday on Monsters Missing Mayhem, found on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Anchor.fm. Silver and Chaotic talk about how monsters and myths came to be and how they would be received in modern day society. Follow, like, and subscribe to support. Also find the podcast on Twitter and Discord with the links below to keep up to date with the newest merch and activity. Besides, who knows what mayhem we will get into next.
If you feel like leaving a rating and a review, that does help out the podcast get visibility on all the sites and hosts that we're hosting on. Currently, you can only, that I'm aware of, leave a review on Apple Podcast, but it does help us get known and spread in the Apple listings. That is all.